Welcome, everybody. We're glad you joined us for this evening, and I hope everybody enjoyed Olivia. She was amazing, and we're lucky to have athletes that come back to Illinois and share their thoughts and their experiences with our athletes. Tonight, we're going to talk to head coach Tim Loeffler. He is the head coach of the University of Illinois at Chicago for the women and men's swimming and diving team. Tim grew up in Illinois, and he actually was also a high school state champion in 2004. He won the 500 freestyle. He also went on to win the mile at the senior state championship for Illinois swimming that year. And then he went on scholarship to the University of Minnesota. And now he's made full circle and he's back here in Illinois. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Tim.
Sounds good, Pam. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. Like Pam says, I originally grew up in Illinois. I'm actually originally from Elmhurst, where I am right now. Hunkering down with my parents, spending time with them. As I was jokingly saying after the season, I wouldn't mind getting some time off, but obviously this wasn't what I was expecting. And so I've been able to, since I've been at USC, I've been able to start giving back to the state. And a few years ago, I started doing recruiting seminars with parents during the senior state meet and talking about all the different rules and everything else. And tonight specifically, Pam really wanted me to touch on the NCAA recruiting and how things are now changing because of the rules and, the pandemic that's going on and everything else. And I can honestly tell you, I know that there is a lot of hearsay about what certain schools might be doing or what certain sports might be having going on and everything else. I'm kind of here to set the record straight in the sense of what the NCAA has presented to us, but also what is factual right now in the sense of what rules have come out and then maybe what they might be talking about and everything else. But, as I said in the beginning, maybe before some of you kind of came on, everything right now that the NCAA is doing or everything right now that we are doing on the college side of recruiting is reactionary to what is going on. As coaches, obviously this kind of blindsided us in the sense of we never had to deal with anything like this before, but also we had to really take time and focus on our student athletes and their well-being. And so usually March and April, myself and my staff were on the road constantly recruiting, going to championship meets, visiting club teams, doing home visits and all those type of things. And it all came to a quick stop. And for us specifically at UIC, we were actually going on spring break when this all came up. And so not only did we have to make sure that all of our students were okay and safe and heading back home, but also once we had already left to go home, still had things back in dorms. And so we had to deal with, how are they going to get their belongings and how we're going to do the move outs and all those type of things. And so it's kind of across the board for colleges. And as I have talks with multiple college coaches every week, it's kind of put everyone a few weeks back in just the way that we were handling things, in the way that we were doing our recruiting, because above all, we've got to make sure that our team and our student athletes are okay. And that's our number one goal always. And so, I think for some of you who might have had some consistent communication with Coach A's or starting to set up visits and all that, and things might have gotten a little quiet for you, or, it's not really going anywhere right now. Just understand that as college coaches, we've got to make sure that our current student athletes are doing okay. And we're doing what we can to try and take care of them and try to help them out. And in my case, I've got 50 student athletes that I'm overlooking between my men's and women's program. And so they're still doing their online courses. A lot of them are in the process of, either being in one of the medical fields here at UIC, whether it's pre-med, nursing, pharmacy, or we've got about a third of our team in engineering. So to go for those courses and take them online has been a pretty big transition for them. And so now that we're kind of getting towards the end of our school year, we're really starting to shift our focus back onto recruiting, as I think a lot of other college coaches are. And so kind of moving forward, I'll talk a little bit about the current seniors right now, student athletes who are still trying to figure out what they're going to be doing for the fall, because I know that there's still some of you out there and you might be stressing right now about how is this going to affect me being able to find a college or to be able to be a part of the college in the fall. And so I know one of the things that have come up is that there were students still trying to take the SAT or ACT for acceptance into next fall, whether they were trying to get their scores up or they were just waiting until the end to try and do it. You know, as surprising as that might be for some people, it happens every year. I can tell you this much. The NCAA has allowed student athletes to be qualified to compete at the collegiate level right now without having to take either the ACT or SAT for next year. And so that's for the graduating high school class of 2020. They have to have a minimum GPA, which I believe is a 2.3 across the country. Now that is for the national, the NCAA guidelines, the kind of the bottom line of what they're accepting for this coming fall. Every university is going to be a little different. So if there's specific schools that you are talking to, I recommend reaching out to them to see how they are changing up their academic acceptance right now or how they're doing those certain things. I know UIC, for example, has been okay with students not having the ACT or SAT, but we still have to have a high enough standard with the GPA, especially for certain programs like engineering or some of the other strenuous STEM majors, as we call them at UIC, to make sure that they hit those levels. It's, like I said, it's a very unique case, so that's what they're focused on. As for the 2021 with, you know, rising seniors for next fall who are graduating next spring, they have not looked too much into yet about qualifications of the SAT or ACT or how that's going to happen, very much because they want to see how the next few months go. And really, the way the NCAA is kind of handling everything right now is they're looking basically 4 weeks into the future, and all their decisions are just for that next month. So they are not going to make any projections yet for you know, July, August, September, or anything like that. I know you might see things on the news or might hear things other schools are doing or what they might be doing, but nothing has come into effect yet. And so what we as coaches have kind of decided as, let's focus on what we're able to control and just move forward with it, because we just don't want to spend too much time on all the speculation that's out there. One of the big things with recruiting, obviously with this spring, with the championship meets and then this summer, is a lot of coaches are either asking students to come and visit, or they are going out to club teams or competitions to do recruiting in person. As of right now, the NCAA has what is called a dead period put on all sports. What that means is that we as college coaches and you as recruits are not allowed to do any in-person recruiting during that time. So that means official visits, unofficial visits, home visits with coaches, club visits. Obviously, there's no competitions going on, so we don't need to worry too much about that. They have gotten that through the end of May. We do not know if it will be extended or not. My guess is it will be. And so it's changing a little bit of the way that we are handling the way we are doing recruiting. I'm sure there's college coaches out there, including ourselves, who are starting to do a lot more video meetings like this with recruits instead of just being over the phone or through email. They're trying to come up with creative ways to do virtual tours of campus or virtual tours of the facilities, so recruits are able to see a little bit more of it. They are also working on the rules right now, just because we have rules in place that I can't have student athletes be a part of a recruiting call with me or those kind of things. You know, if they know recruits, obviously they can talk to them on their own, but it's something that I can't push or something that I can't ask them to do. Because of everything that's going on, they are looking to change that rule just so student athletes or recruits will have an opportunity to maybe talk to these student athletes and ask about the school or how it is for them and all those type of things. We don't see that going into effect until at least June, because they want to make sure that our current student athletes are done with all their studies before we ask them to do anything like that. So that is something that is in the works, but has not been finalized yet or has not been approved yet. And so you'll see a lot of teams now before then will get creative with their social media, letting the student athletes kind of do takeovers for the day, showing what they're doing while they're at home, or doing kind of collaborative videos showing kind of recaps of the year or different things they do for it. Social media is probably becoming the biggest outlet for these programs and kind of showing what's going on with the teams and what we've been up to, just because right now that's our only way to really kind of be able to connect with the outside world. And so, those are kind of some of the things that we're working on, with that dead period and trying to work on the contacts and everything else. Outside of that, with the college recruiting, I know a lot of you, especially in the class of 2021, because it's become such a more kind of predominant thing in the sense of recruits are starting to commit earlier and earlier to the process. And they're wondering how this might hold things up or how this might stop things in the midst of what they're doing. Like I said before, with this being reactionary, a lot of schools and a lot of coaches are trying to figure out the best way to kind of handle this moving forward. I know it's been a trend to see more recruits trying to commit as early as possible. On the other side, though, we see more of a trend of students transferring out of colleges after their freshman and sophomore year, just because they are not either seeing the schools before they're making these commits. They feel pressured in these to these decisions because of the money that's involved, or because family needs or things like that. And what I can tell you right now is, as a coaching community, we are understanding very much the strain this pandemic is having on the families and the recruits during this time. We know a lot of people are possibly not working because of it, or have more family burdens on because of the things that are going on. And so we are taking all that into effect. And even though you might have people who are looking to commit right away or do certain things right now, in reality, the signing period has not changed. The signing period for the class of 2021 will still remain in fall of 2020. And so you do have time to really kind of consider your commitment. And I think we will start to see a lot of the verbal commitments start to slow down during this time, because number one, we want people to be focused on their family and their loved ones to make sure that they're all able to get through this time. But number two, things might have changed with finances, or things might have changed with wanting to go far away from home, or different things like that. And so what I can honestly say to any recruits out there who are dealing with these type of decisions right now, or who are trying to work with their families or with coaches trying to figure out these type of things, take your time. Truly take your time during this. And I cannot stress that enough. I know you might feel like you're going to be missing out on something if you don't make a decision sooner than later, or that, they might move on to everything. What's so unique about this situation we're all in is that it's affecting everyone across the country. And so I think that's something that we have to keep in mind, is that not just you're the only one who's stuck at home and all that, but the coaches you're talking to are stuck at home as well. So coaches are going to be a little bit more patient, I think, with this process right now, or at least I'm hoping they are. And from what I've been hearing, that's what a lot of them have been saying. Now, I'm sure there's still some coaches out there who might be in a little bit of a panic mode and trying to push some things, but we are asking all of them as kind of a group just to help the recruits during this time, because you're already dealing with enough stress as is. And so if I had to give my projections on how things are looking, more than likely official visits probably won't start up until at least the fall. Just because even though some states might open and some colleges might reopen their campuses or different things like that, you're still dealing with the travel of people coming from all over the country and possibly all over the world to get back to these college campuses. You look at some of these bigger schools who are part of the Power 5 conferences, like the Big Ten, the SEC, the ACC, things like that. They've got up to 30 to 40% of their students who are international. And so they've got to think about being able to bring them all back and putting them in quarantine and doing all those type of things. So even though as some states might start to open up, it's going to be a slow process in the way the recruiting gets back to, I want to say, a level of normalcy. And so that's something that we need to understand. I think that's something that coaches are starting to realize, in the sense of, having recruits come on visits and all those type of things, it might be a few months. And I think a lot of us are planning for that hopefully to be closer to the fall, possibly the winter. And that's just our guess or our estimate on what the NCAA is providing us at this time. And I'm very adamant with the NCAA, and I think a lot of us are, is that any decisions they're going to make, it's going to be across the board. They cannot open up recruiting for one school and not for the other, because, that's an unfair advantage. And so the rules they make in recruiting are going to be more than likely by division, so 1, 2, 3. But as of right now, and what I've seen with this pandemic, they're making the same rules across all 3 divisions. And I think that's just on a safety part of it, making sure that none of these teams or none of these recruits come at harm with what they're doing. And so that's kind of where we're at with a lot of this right now. And I know there might be a lot of questions, and like Pam says, you can click on the chat and I'll be able to answer questions with it. She did ask me to touch on how my team specifically is handling this pandemic and how they've been at home and everything else. As of right now, we've been home for a little over 4 weeks, and which is crazy. But what I can tell you is I've been very fortunate to have a staff that has done a tremendous job keeping our team together. My 2 other primary coaches on staff, Ashley Dell and Susan Bromberg, are actually both Illinois natives as well. Susan, who lives in Deerfield, is our diving coach, and then Ashley, who is my primary assistant coach with our team, is a Lake Forest native. And so, we're fortunate that we've got this passion about being at UIC and being back home in our home state. But we, decided when all this went down to take the hiatus from recruiting for a few weeks to make sure we were able to focus on our team and help them out with everything that they had going on, because we knew the stresses that were going to come in with it, the stress of the unknown of what's going to happen, the stress of the virus itself and who might have it at that point or anything like that. And we were fortunate to have all of our swimmers and divers safe from it and be able to be back with their families. But then how the e-learning was going to be set up, how graduation for my seniors was going to happen, since that's got to be online now, which is really heartbreaking for us. But how are we going to be able to stay motivated as a team? And I think what we first did was we gave our student athletes the opportunity to be vulnerable with us and really talk about what they were personally dealing with, because a lot of them, even though they felt they were the only ones who had the feelings or the emotions about certain things, a lot of their other teammates felt the same way. And so we actually even did open up as we've got a spreadsheet that they have connection to. And they're able just to write into that spreadsheet about maybe some things that they are having a hard time dealing with or having things that they're struggling with. I can tell you right off the bat, one of the biggest things they were all dealing with was sleep. They were used to waking up for morning practice, 5 days a week. And now that they didn't have that, they found themselves up at 1, 2, 3 in the morning, just kind of sitting there. And so, we helped them with some different things like that. Some of them were having a hard time staying focused or motivated during their e-learning because they're sitting in their, childhood bedroom, or they're, at the kitchen table of their parents' house, and they didn't know how to handle those type of things. Some of them, it was nutrition. They weren't in the dorms. They didn't have the dining halls anymore. They had to go back to making their own food. How are they going to handle that? And so we had to focus on all those bare things before we even really talked about the workout side of it. And the NCAA for our teams came out and said, hey, normally during the season, you're able to account for 20 hours of training during the season or during each week of the season. And once this all happened, they told us right off the bat, hey, you can't hold them accountable for any kind of training. Now, we're able to give them workouts and we're able to help them out with those areas, but they were very focused on the student athlete wellness part of it, saying, hey, you can't force them to do certain things because we need to make sure that they're okay. And we completely understood that. And what we started to realize was our athletes really did want those workouts and really did want them. And so we needed to be creative in the sense of how were we able to take what we did in the pool every day and be able to transfer that to individually to the homes we were in and the way we were handling things. And so For any of those of you who follow us on Instagram, you can see we post 3 times a week our Zoom meetings that we have. And so we meet as a team 3 times a week on Zoom. And it's not just to go over, what's going on with the university or things that we need to take care of, kind of in-house stuff or anything like that. But we very much wanted it to be an opportunity that these student athletes can look forward to throughout the week, knowing that, hey, I just got to get through this stuff because I'm going to be able to see everyone tonight. And I think that was the atmosphere, as a staff, we decided to do. And so, we've come up with different games that we do throughout the week on Zoom, whether it's charades or different trivia stuff. We've done theme nights. Last Monday, we had baby picture night, so they're able to make all their backgrounds on Zoom, their baby pictures. Wednesday, we had, I think it was like Wacky Hat Wednesday. Yesterday, we had it where they all had their first ever kind of swimming photos as their background. And we're just doing different things each week that they can kind of look forward to and see what's going on. For a lot of them to see my swimming photo from when I was 8 years old without a beard and all that was definitely kind of a culture shock for some of them. But, I think that kind of gives them different things to be able to look forward to. One of the other big things that we have done really with the day-to-day check-ins, and, I had to send one out to them right before this, and I know I've gotten a few messages back while this is going on. But we use the app Marco Polo. And for those of you who don't know what it is, it's kind of like a group chat combined with Snapchat. And so it's a group chat in the sense of you're using videos to communicate back and forth. And so that's the way that we can do the quick and easy check-ins of saying, hey, just got done with some classes, going out for a run right now. Hope you guys are all doing well. Or, hey, each week we have a few swimmers in the team kind of come up with a challenge for everyone to do for a workout. And so they'll send it out and the teams will collaborate and do different videos together. And so one of the things we did was having the number of athletes that we did, we broke them up into smaller teams. So I think it was like teams of 3 that we did. And so when we do the trivia, when we do the charades, when we do the challenges, they can kind of still compete against each other in that sense of it and have these different teams. I know we've got different team names from the Quinteen Cuties to the Corona Cronies. We've got them all. And they're able just to kind of have fun with it. They're able to kind of keep a little bit of that competition going. And so we're trying to do what we can to keep that level of normalcy. But I think one of the things we also talk about, and this is something that I hope, every swimmer who's on this right now can kind of take away from this, but we talk about and we hope about the possibility or the timing of when we are able to get back and we are able to be back in the pool and training together, and making sure that the moments we're feeling right now, the emotions we have about everything that's going on, we keep a hold of that during the times when our season will get tough again, during the times where there's, inches of snow on the ground and it's 5 degrees outside and we got to get to practice, because I know right now every single one of my swimmers would give anything to have one of those mornings back instead of doing this. And I think as athletes and even as coaches, we might take some of what we had for granted, whether it's the workouts we had, the competitions, even the bad races we had. I know that we would all want to be able to get those back. And so it's something that we're keeping true to us. And it's something that, we're looking to kind of move forward with everything we've got with that. So that's a little bit of what I've got about my team. I don't want to go too much into it. I'm a little bit of an emotional guy, and I don't also talk about what they do and how great they are. But I'll look at the chat with a few of the questions.
Tim,
Yep.
Tim, just to interrupt, we got some private, I have some questions that didn't go to everyone, and they're really good questions. Because Jader wanted to know, when should swimmers start to complete athletic questionnaires?
When should they start them? I would say the earliest would be, at the very earliest, spring of your sophomore year. Primarily, I would say your junior year would be the best time. But spring of your sophomore year, just so a lot of coaches, what they'll do that and they say, hey, thank you for it, we'll be in touch with you, and kind of get that ready. But anytime after that is a good time to do it. What I also highly recommend with any questionnaires that you fill out for any university, and I know most teams have them on their team websites, is once you complete that questionnaire, follow up with an email to one of the coaches just saying, hey, coach, my name is so-and-so. I have filled out one of your questionnaires. You know, I'm very interested in your program. You know, here's the best way to contact me. Just to kind of give a double confirmation on that, just because depending on the time of the year or depending on what's going on with the program, things can fall through the cracks for coaches. You know, I've had points of the year where we're in the middle of a competition or we're on the road or we're doing all these things, and I check my phone and I've got 75 questionnaires that day that I need to get through. You know, as much as I want to think I'm Superman and kind of handle those things, I know that some things might fall through the cracks every now and then with them. So to be able to follow up through an email is a little bit easier to kind of do that. And don't feel like once you send an email, if you don't get a response from them, don't feel like it's an automatic no. Because like I said, there's a lot of emails that we do get in recruiting. So I would give them at least a week, maybe two, and just follow up again saying, hey, coach, I just want to make sure you got this. And that really should be, you know, a good sign then with that coach saying, okay, hey, there's someone who's really interested. I got to make sure I really get back to them. Or, oh, you know what, I forgot. Or, you know, hey, I had an athlete coming when I was typing it up. So things like that do happen. So I don't want you to get discouraged in any way with those type of things. So
should they also be cognizant of the NCAA schedule at the time that they're trying to contact the coaches?
Ideally, to give families an idea of their recruiting time. Usually the month of November and early December is very busy for us because that's when we have a lot of our invitationals. You know, I know for us, for example, we had a week-long invitational at IUPUI's pool, and then we were on Thanksgiving, and the week after that, I was down at the U.S. Open. So I had really 3 weeks of being on the road for all those things. And then late February, early March is also a very busy time for us because that's when our conference championships are and these NCAA championships are. And we're really focused on that specific time with it. Outside of that, we're usually pretty open. Early fall is a great time. January is a pretty good time, but then spring and summer are usually the best. And so that's when I would recommend that as well.
Okay, well, Anne has a good question too. Any advice for upcoming juniors who are worried there may not be a fall high school season and what this means for their times and recruiting next year?
It's a tough one because I know a lot of student athletes are feeling like they're getting things taken away from them. And I heard for them. I know there's a lot of recruits we were talking to who were banking on these past spring championships and really dropping some time there, being able to show it. Or, you know, you look at the state of California, the spring is their high school season. So they lost their entire season with that. Coaches are going to have to get creative with their recruiting on our end. You know, we're really going to have to look at things like the time progression over the last few years. We might be asking for more and more video from student athletes just on racing or anything else they might have. And we're also going to be having to do a lot more reaching out to their club and high school coaches to really find out how the progression's been in practice. Maybe they can give us an idea of how the training's been for them and the progressions they've seen. And really, if there's one thing I've learned in my time with coaching, you know, the club and high school coaches are huge assets because they're the ones who see the day-to-day progression. You know, we might see a meet and we don't know what's going on with that meet just because we see the times. We don't know if they're sick or if they're there or, you know, if there was other things going on or if they weren't rested for it. And so the communication we have with those club coaches really help us understand what that student athlete is doing every single day. And so I think as recruits, to have that relationship with your club and high school coaches and you know, working with them on that, they're great assets. And a lot of them, especially in the state of Illinois, have been through this process countless times with recruiting. And, you know, they'll be able to help you communicate with those college coaches.
Good. I'm going to throw another one at you. Stephanie wanted to know, how difficult is it to swim in college while studying a STEM major?
A lot of it's really going to kind of depend on two things. Number one, it's going to depend on the student athlete and their work habits and in their study habits with what they're able to do. But also finding that university that's going to have the right support system for you. Most universities, especially Division I universities, will have some form of a student athlete academic center or student athlete advising, who will help you with any type of tutoring needs that you need or learning specialists or things like that, but also help you in the sense of any time missed you have to go compete, whether it's leaving for dual meet on a Friday or having an invitational and missing multiple days during the week. Those advisors are going to be able to be there for you to help work with professors to make up any work you might miss or any quizzes or things like that, so you won't get penalized for it. But a lot of what I've seen, it really kind of comes down to the student athletes and the self drive that they have within them, because we will have all these resources, we will have all these tools for them, and really I'm always amazed at the universities I've been at, the resources we have. But it's going to be very much on the student athlete to take that first step and ask for that help. College professors, I've worked at very different universities. I've worked in the Big Ten, I've worked at a military academy, and I've worked at a public urban research university. So I've had completely different experiences at all three. But I can tell you, no matter what, these college professors aren't going to be going to your dorm room, knocking on your door to make sure you turn in your homework. You need to have a little bit of that motivation to make sure you do it. And so that's something that we work with them on. Swimmers normally are a little bit more driven academically than some of the other sports, and I don't want to knock any other sports, but there's a reason why we're usually kind of leading the GPA curve for the programs or for the departments. And so it's doable, but I think those are open conversations you have with the coaches that you're talking in the recruiting process. If you've got a specific area that you're looking to go into or a specific goal you have academically, you need to be open and honest with them, because there might be some universities they'll say, hey, that's a little too tough to do, or hey, it's going to be very hard to do with swimming. You've got to have that realization that academics, no matter what, do need to come first in that way of it. There's only a handful of people who can really say that they've been able to make a career out of the sport. And as small of our margin might look, it's even smaller than a lot of other sports. And so we need to understand that as coaches, we're very much working with these students to make them the best swimmers possible, but to also make sure that they're ready for that next step once they graduate. And so the academic piece should be a very big part of your recruiting process and should be one of the biggest things you talk about with these universities and these coaches that you're talking to.
Okay, how about what's the best website to post your swim profile /times for coaches to go to find recruits?
I know there's a lot of different ones out there, and I can tell you this much. Coaches will look at all of them, especially if you send them to them, things like that. The most popular one that I have seen, in time and time again, I see more college coaches using it, is collegeswimming.com. Primarily just because it's the most price effective for the recruits. I know some of them out there can get very expensive for some athletes, but collegeswimming.com and Greg Earhart, who was the one who really kind of set that up and got that going, has done a phenomenal job keeping the costs extremely low for the recruits and doing most of the costs to the colleges and the college coaches, knowing that we need those resources, but also doing a great job linking your profiles to USA Swimming and high school swimming, so your times are automatically being uploaded on there after the meets. And I think that's the nice thing is, even though we have Meet Mobile and some other resources, I can go on to a recruit's page and see the times automatically uploaded from that weekend or check in with them. So if I had to pick one of them, it would be collegeswimming.com.
Okay, well, Amanda wants to know if virtual visits would be a good substitute for real college visits during this time, or should visits be reserved for after colleges open up?
It's a really good question. And obviously some of it's going to have to depend on the timing of everything and how long this goes. I think virtual visits are a great stepping stone in the sense of it's not going to be something that they can count against your 5 official visits that the NCAA allows. And so it'll just give you more information on everything that's going on. And so I would say it's a great stepping stone, but it's not going to replace an official visit, because there's a very big difference between seeing a university, and let's be honest, with some of these virtual tours, these universities are going to show the absolute best of everything that they have to offer. I mean, if I had it my way, I'd have the virtual tour look like my office is on top of the Sears Tower, but we all know that that's not true. I think it's something good to kind of keep it in place. And I think once the summer comes along and they approve coaches being able to have student athletes get involved with recruiting, I think that's going to be a very big asset as well. And I also recommend club coaches in the sense now to kind of help their student athletes of reaching out to some of your club alumni who are now college student athletes and things like that, for you guys to be able to have them be able to give talks back to your team and about how their first few years in college were, what were some of the experiences for them, what were some of the things that maybe happened that they weren't expecting, either with academics or with training, just for the high school student athletes to get a little bit more of a feel of kind of how the whole process is working and what's going on with that. I think that's really crucial, just to get as much information as possible.
Okay, I have another one is, if I have already been accepted to UIC, is it too late to fill out the questionnaire? Not to put you on the spot or anything.
No. All I got to say to that is uscflames.com. You'll find my email on there. Email me for that one. And any specific recruiting questions on USC, I don't want to make this at all about my recruiting process, because I don't want this to be an unfair advantage to other coaches. But if you have any specific questions about USC, feel free to email me, and you'll find all my information on uscflames.com. Good
answer. We have another, I don't know exactly, I'm going to try and paraphrase this. So if an athlete looks at a college's times and seems to feel that their times do fit in, or at least are fast enough, but tend to be looked over, should coach go back and talk to the college and say, this might be a good fit for you?
Anytime you get a club coach or a coach to call a college on a recommendation of an athlete, for some reason it seems to do a little bit of a better job. And like I said, there are thousands of recruits that we look at, and some might get overlooked. I think, and this is where collegeswimming.com becomes a great resource, because you can search every team, you can search their top times and events. But what I would also look at specifically is finding out what conference those teams are in. And then on collegeswimming.com, you can look at the conference results and really see where you fit in at the conference championship level. Because a lot of coaches might look at their depth chart if they need to fill, but really they're looking at the conference level and saying, you know, how many points am I going to be able to score, or where is that going to be able to fit? So I think that's another really good area to look at. But yeah, any club coach who gives me a call, it really just kind of opens up the door and kind of gets things going that way to be able to talk about it. And then we're really able to ask the club coaches direct on that student athlete. So I always recommend, if for some reason a student athlete is getting overlooked, feel free to let your club coach get involved and, be able to ask questions.
Good. And then let's see, Ann has another good question here. Do you expect there to be less scholarship money for athletes due to the budget issues from the shutdowns?
That's a really good question. And budget issues are something that we're already starting to see. I know the University of Cincinnati has already cut their men's soccer program. I know that there was a D2 school who is already just shutting down as a university because of all of this. And a lot of it has to do with athletic departments get money from the NCAA every year to help cover costs for things or to help with their budget. Without having a March Madness tournament, without having the spring sports and the spring sport championships, they're looking for that amount to be about 40% less than it has been in years past. What I have heard on our end of it, and I work with our schools conference since I'm the chair for our sport with the Horizon League, is scholarships normally are the last things schools will touch in the sense of cutting funding or anything like that. What they'll start to look at is travel budgets. I know a lot of teams that do the training trips every year down to Florida or somewhere warm during the winter or things like that. There's a good chance that a lot of schools are going to be giving that up this next year, just because that is one of the easiest things to cut. It's something that we all really enjoy, because having a week in Miami in December instead of Chicago in December is a really big difference. But those, I think, are going to be the first things you kind of see with programs who need to save money and the way that they're going to cut them and how that's going to be. But I think it is an honest question for recruits to ask about, you know, how is the program doing or how's the university doing? Because certain schools might have different effects than others. And some of it is you can look at a school in general and see if their enrollment's been up or down, and that can also play a big effect on funding for the university and how those things are going as well.
Okay, and then Grace wants to know if is the biggest thing a coach looks at for potential recruits is how they can contribute points at conference?
I wouldn't say it's the biggest thing. I would say it's the easiest thing that coaches look at. I can tell you this, the first kind of glance you do at a recruit, because numbers are the easiest thing, are going to be times and grades. Grades are massive. Because with swimming, you know, for example, Division I men's programs are allowed 9.9 scholarships and women are allowed 14. Now, we don't have 9.9 men on the team. I don't even know how, you know, would do a 0.9 or anything like that. But so we're looking to make the most of our money. And a lot of that is if we know that we have a recruit that we're able to combine academic aid with, it's a better package that we're able to send. So those are the first two things we really look at. And we might use that as kind of a filter to see where things are. But I think the biggest thing we also do is we look at the progression, you know, how have things been going over the years. Also, the number of events that they can contribute at the college level as well. You know, if someone can score top 8 in one event compared to someone who can score top 16 in 4 events, we might look at that person with the 4. And so, you know, some of it's going to have to do with the needs of that program in the sense of, you know, what are they looking to do? Do they need more depth right now? Do they need someone who can win an event? But, you know, times are, I think, a big part of it. But I think the more resources you're able to give these college coaches, whether it's video, whether it's contacts for them to call out to club coaches or things like that, will just help your resume in with those college teams.
Well, we answered all the questions.
Awesome.
So is there anything that you want to say in parting? I mean, I think we all appreciate the time that you've taken, the honesty that you've shown as far as the NCAA and where things stand right now. And I know, as you and I have talked, it's a revolving stage right now. So it's always good to have the kids check back with whoever they're talking to at what college to see where things are at. Is there anything that you want to say before we sign off on this?
I think the biggest thing is recruiting is such a major decision for the student athletes because it is the next chapter in their lives. And obviously with this curveball that we've been thrown with this pandemic and everything, the added pressure you might feel or the nerves you might have from it, understand, number one, that's completely normal. But number two, take your time with the decision. And, you know, if you've got a college team who's pushing you for a certain thing and you're not ready for that, understand that there's a lot of other programs out there, maybe that you've never heard of, that might be a great fit for you. And so I think this is a perfect time to really start looking at all the different resources that are out there, or all the different teams, or, you know, collegeswimming.com, like I said, is a great one, you know, US News with the school rankings and all that, to really see all the different opportunities out there. And of course, with college coaches, never, ever, ever wait for them to come to you. Reach out to them, you know, feel free to contact them anytime with questions. Let's be honest, we're all sitting at home, so it's not like they have the excuse of being on the road or anything like that. So don't hesitate to reach out to these different college programs or these college coaches to find out where you're at with them, you know, what their decisions are, so then you can start moving on or start focusing on with them of what your next decision will be.
Great. There, now we have questions coming back in. Sorry. You want
You're fine.
You okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it best to reach out to head coaches, or should we include assistant coaches in emails as well?
I always recommend having at least 2 coaches on the email. So whether it's a head coach, an assistant coach, or 2 assistant coaches, some rosters you'll see they'll have a coach that says recruiting coordinator on there. You know, having 2 coaches on it, one of them will absolutely be able to see it and respond right away. Or like I know, for example, certain points of the year, like this morning I had a recruit reaching out to me, and I was on a 3.5-hour call with the Horizon, or with my conference, trying to figure out some things. I was able just to pass it right along to Ashley, and she was able to get back to them right away. And so 2 coaches is always ideal for emails.
Good. How involved should the club coaches be in an athlete's recruiting process? We kind of touched on that in an earlier question, but maybe you can just go over that one more time.
Yeah, I think the overall thing, and this is not just with club coaches or high school coaches, but and I know I might ruffle some feathers with this, but this also goes with parents as well. College coaches want to hear from the student athletes. They want to hear from the recruits because, I'm going to pick on Carolyn Grievers because she's here right now. I'm not recruiting Carolyn to swim for my team. I'm recruiting her student athlete. And so I think they're great there to let us know a little bit more of a personal side about an athlete, or how that athlete's been training, or how they are as a teammate. But at the end of the day, we really want to hear from the student athlete, because as much as we want to make sure that we're going to be a good fit for them, we as coaches need to make sure that they're a great fit for our program. And so I think that's the number one thing. And so, one thing I always do with my recruits is, I try to keep as direct of a contact with them. I'll set up a time to call the club coaches and have a meeting with them. And then I'll also let parents know if they've got specific questions, or I know how some recruits can be on relaying messages back and forth to their families. Set up a specific time with them to answer any questions that they might have about all of this. And so, but yeah, the priority will be the student athlete. So
good. And then I think we have the last one here is, when does the class of 2020 have to commit by?
So the class of 2020, which is the current senior class, I know a lot of universities have extended their application process because of basically the whole spring has been shut down with everything going on. The easiest way to do it, and the way I've seen a lot of the universities do it, if you just go to their general website, which most of them is schoolname.edu, for example, or usc.edu, they will have a red bar or a toolbar on there that says COVID updates, and they will show you what's going on with their application process, how everything is. Most schools, it's May 1st. I know, for example, our Common App has been extended until the end of June, just to help, some of these students kind of get back on their feet and be able to focus on. I will also recommend reaching out to certain coaches, just because athletic departments do have some wiggle room with admissions, in the sense of if they have a late admit or someone who's a little late to the game, of being able to kind of get them through that process.
Good. Michelle came, I think we touched on this a little bit too, but maybe we can add some more comments to it.
Yeah.
How important is high school swimming to college recruiting?
I know that's a tough one, just because Illinois is a massive high school swimming state. There's a lot of states out there that doesn't have a focus on high school swimming, or don't have those type of things, or have a combination of the two. So it's kind of a case-by-case scenario. Ideally, we're looking for student athletes who are swimming year-round, because the college season goes from September through the middle of March. And so we need swimmers who are going to be able to handle the training and be able to compete during those times. Obviously, with everything going on, that might change. And so, like I said, it's all kind of reactionary right now. I think that's something to ask that coach specifically. And I think that's where, a lot of the different context and all that kind of stuff is going to have to come into play.
Okay. Julie has a good question for you. Is it better to be from a large club or a high school team?
There's not a right or wrong answer to this one. There really isn't, because I've had conference champions who are from club teams with satellites all over the place, to an athlete who is the very first Division I swimmer from their area or their club team. It's something that I think what coaches are looking very much at more, and this is one of the reasons why you see a lot of coaches at meets or coming by practices or talking to coaches and things like that, is we're not so much worried about what team they're on, or maybe like a brand name or things like that. We're looking very much more of that individual, how they're helping out their current club mates, how they're pushing them, how they're pushing themselves. And to be honest, you know, whether you're part of a giant club team or a small one or a high school team, water's water. And so, you know, if you've got that self-drive and you've got that relationship with the coach that you feel confident that can get you to the level you want to be, it's not going to matter too much, you know, how bright and shiny it is.
Okay.
Really good questions.
Do you have any advice on keeping in shape out of the pool?
Being in the state of Illinois and what I've been able to see from a lot of the club coaches and a lot of the things just online and everything else is there's a lot of club teams and there's a lot of coaches on here who are doing everything they can to give as many resources to their athletes. And so I think the biggest asset is, you know, your coach is not just there for you in the pool, they're there for you at all times. And so I would recommend reaching out to them because I'm sure a lot of them have been working on a plan. I know a lot of them have been getting together and trying to figure out different ways or ideas or things like that. I think the biggest thing right now is consistency, stay moving. You know, I know it's a little tough in Illinois when we're 70 degrees one day and 3 inches of snow the next, but getting creative with what you're doing. And one of the things we touched on with our program yesterday was the way we're motivating ourselves. You know, motivation you cannot link to emotions in the sense of, you know, I'm doing this because I want to feel better. I'm doing this because, you know, I want to be a little bit more happy or stuff like that. Because guess what? You go from 70 degrees to 3 inches of snow, no one's going to feel motivated to do anything. But I think being able to work with your club coach, being able to work with your team and to talk about things that you still want to shoot for, whether it's time standards once we get back or different meets or things like that, keeping those in mind and talking about them will help maintain that motivation. And I also think, you know, take a page from our book, you know, the Marco Polo thing, you get, you know, I get 30 videos a day of athletes getting out and working. If you're the one who's not doing it, that guilt's going to set in pretty quickly. So I think having those open lanes of communication will help out as well.
That's great. Well, I can't tell you enough how much we appreciated you taking the time to be with us tonight.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that, you know, again, we're in a new normal and trying to maneuver through this when you're a senior in high school or a junior or even a sophomore is a bit rough. So
absolutely,
college and all the kids is very much appreciated.
Absolutely. And I think the biggest thing I can say out there is, you know, number one, I hope everyone is staying safe and I hope your families are doing well and things like that. And the second thing is don't just sit and wait for something to happen. You know, if you need to get back into shape, get moving. If you need to talk to colleges, start reaching out to them. But don't wait until this thing is over. You know, there's going to be two different types of groups that we tell our athletes. It's going to be the group who's going to make the excuse and why they're behind because of all of this, or there's going to be the group who's going to be ready to go. So, you know, hopefully the next time I'm able to talk to a group like this, it's in person. And yeah, thanks, Pam.
Yeah, thank you. And
absolutely.
We have recorded this and we recorded our one with Olivia, so they will be on YouTube for anybody who has missed it.
Oh, perfect.
And you know what? We're going to say goodnight. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Tim.